If you're thinking about moving to Austin, one of the first things you'll need to consider is which area are you most interested in. There are a lot of options across the metro, and every one of them has pros and cons. In the middle of downtown, most of your options will be limited to condos. But if you go 10 to 20 miles out in any direction, you're going to find master plan communities, and generally speaking, the further out you go, the newer the community. But what about the area in between? Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at some of your options. Now, to keep the video within a reasonable time range, we're going to further limit it to the northern section. In this area, we're going to find neighborhoods such as Hyde Park, Rosedale, Allendale, and Crestview. Most of the homes here were originally built between 1920 and 1960, but the entire area has been going through a rebirth in recent years. You'll find a combination of untouched older homes, completely remodeled and updated ones, and brand new construction with modern designs. In some respects, this area has the best of both worlds. You'll be living in a residential neighborhood like a suburb, but are also close to all the downtown events and entertainment. If you stick around for this video, I'm going to tell you all about it. Two of the most recognizable landmarks in the northern portion of downtown Austin are the Texas Capitol Building and the University of Texas. For reference, construction was completed on the Capitol Building in 1888. There are a couple of buildings on the university campus that date back earlier than that. Now, because these buildings have been here for so long, they offer a reference point for all the development that has happened around them. The Capitol property covers the area between 11th Street and 15th Street. The university starts at Martin Luther King Boulevard, which was originally 19th Street, and extends all the way up to 30th Street. The area we're going to look at is right here, between the northern portion of the university at around 35th Street, all the way north to 183. I think it's important to understand a little bit about the history, because it's reflected in the age of the homes in this area. This is what Austin looked like back in the late 1800s. Notice there are very few houses and streets outside the downtown area. As Austin began to grow, Hyde Park was one of the first residential developments, the first suburb, if you will. This is what the original plat map looked like. Those are man-made lakes to the left and have since been drained. Residential development worked a lot differently back in those days. There were no builders or model homes. If you were interested, you bought a tract of land and found your own builder or built the house yourself. Now, by today's standards, it took a long time to complete the Hyde Park development. The first lots were sold in the early 1900s and the last ones in the mid-1930s. By that time, other areas such as Rosedale began to be developed. But it wasn't until after World War II that the development really began to take off. By the 1950s and 60s, the other neighborhoods like Allendale and Crestview were developed. One of the huge pros of living in this area is the proximity to all the restaurants, bars, and businesses. Burnett Road is the best example. Now, a lot of things are changing. You'll see more and more apartment buildings replacing the older businesses, but there is still that unique Austin vibe. Now, if you're thinking about buying in this area, the first thing you'll need to wrap your mind around are the prices. These houses might have been starter homes in the 50s and 60s, but not anymore. I'm going to avoid throwing out specific numbers in this video because the housing market is in a state of flux. Prices skyrocketed over the last couple of years, and it's slowing down a little bit now. Some are forecasting a crash, while others prefer the term stabilizing. One thing is for certain, it's very difficult to pinpoint true market value. A house may have sold for $800,000 last year, but if a comparable house has been listed for 6 months with no buyers, everybody is going to start wondering whether or not it's still worth $800,000. The huge pro about this area is the location. So if you do want to look here, and the prices are within your budget, let's talk about the 3 types of houses you're going to find. The first is one that is completely untouched. Likely somebody bought it and has lived in it for decades. Now, before the pandemic, these types of houses were rarely listed for sale through the MLS. If you don't know, that's the multiple listing service which is used by realtors. What would happen is an investor would get to the homeowner before they talked to a realtor and would offer convenience. The houses usually needed some work and often had deferred maintenance. And the homeowner usually didn't want to invest the time or the money to get it ready for sale. The investor bought it, usually at a discount, remodeled it, and then resold it. During the pandemic housing frenzy we just went through, anything and everything sold through the MLS. I remember seeing houses that were ripped down to the studs and the remodel was only partially complete, yet they still got more than the list price. Now, there has been a lot of remodeling in this area, but there are still a lot of houses that are untouched. In a softening market like we're in now, where you have less buyer demand, these types of houses may not sell as easily through the MLS as they did over the last couple of years. Now, if you're an investor, you'll have some kind of criteria about how much you can pay for the house before you pay for the remodeling and then still make a profit when you sell it. But if you're buying it for your personal residence, you might be willing to pay a little bit more than that investor will because you don't necessarily have to see the immediate return in a short period of time. If you do buy a house like this and plan to remodel it, remember, these are old houses. The newest ones were built in the late 60s and early 70s. The ones built before the 1940s won't even have a slab foundation. You'll have cast iron sewer lines, aluminum wiring, not to mention that houses before the 1960s didn't even have central air conditioning. Now, it's certainly possible to do a remodel. There are plenty of examples in this area, some ones that are very tastefully done. But if you've never gone through a project like this, learn from experienced remodelers. Every one of them will tell you, you can do an inspection, you can do your due diligence, but you never know what you might be dealing with until after you start ripping out those walls. Now, the second type of house you're going to encounter is one that someone else has already done the remodeling. These are going to be more expensive than the untouched ones, but you won't need to be worrying about hiring the contractors. And they usually look great. Most times the emphasis is on the interior. I personally prefer the ones where they spend a little bit more time on the exterior and get a little bit more creative than just painting the brick. Builders are required to provide minimum warranties, but remodelers aren't. You should try to verify all the proper permits were pulled, and if you do a home inspection, it should uncover any major areas of concern. Many times, the seller is the one who had the work done, so they should be able to provide things like the name of the contractor who did the work and any applicable warranties. Remember though, a transferable warranty is somewhat misleading, particularly on things like foundations. Let's say someone had the foundation repaired and they have a transferable warranty on it. That warranty usually only covers the work that was done. So if that foundation begins to shift again, they might say you need more piers or you should have gotten interior piers. That won't be covered under the warranty. So once you take possession of the house, it would be your expense. The final type of house you're going to find are the ones where the old house is torn down and a completely new one is built. These are usually going to be bigger, they're going to be more energy efficient, and will have a warranty. The Texas Property Code requires that the builder provide a 10-year foundation and structural warranty. But one thing to be aware of is a lot of the new construction in this area has been done by smaller companies. If someone puts up the money to buy the land and then build a house and then sell it for a profit, they may not be in the home building business in 10 years. Now, you should try to get as much information as you can about the builder, and I'm certainly not saying you will have a problem with the small builder honoring a warranty. I'm merely suggesting that if you find a good realtor to work with, they should help you ask the right questions so you can minimize your surprises and your future expenses. Now, if you're the one who's going to be tearing down the old house and building a new one, I would highly suggest you find a general contractor who has extensive experience building in Austin. You especially want someone who can help you navigate the permitting and zoning. It's a very slow process in Austin, and if you haven't done it before, any mistakes or assumptions could drag it on even longer. Now, the good news is the market is beginning to favor buyers more. It wasn't that long ago when people were buying these houses without any kind of inspection. There is a higher risk of unexpected costs when you buy an older house, and the best advice is to try to get as much information as you can. This is a great area, and I believe it's going to remain in high demand. Don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. You know, I get emails, texts, and phone calls almost every day from people who think about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, and I'd love to help you out too. If you like this video, you should check out this other one that I did. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. All of my contact information is in the video description, so don't be shy. Let's make the real estate dreams come true.